Well, we've been talking a lot about just what President Trump said at that press conference at the White House a little earlier. It was an announcement on defence, but he also took a number of questions from the reporters gathered there. So he was able to put to rest a story that's dominated the internet in the past few days, serious rumours about the president's health.
Indeed, it's thought the speculation was in part sparked by this photo from late August showing bruising on the back of Donald Trump's hand. After that was caught on camera, claims about his health gathered tens of millions of views across X, TikTok and Facebook.
Yeah, the president's last public engagement before today's press conference had been a cabinet meeting held a week ago where he spoke for nearly 3.25 hours. Now, the president did address the issue of these rumours circulating on Sunday night. He posted on his Truth Social network that he had never felt better.
And a little earlier, as we were mentioning, President Trump addressed those rumours at the White House, defining them as fake news.
All right, friends, welcome back to Dr. John Podcast Family. 36 senior physicians have formally called for Trump's removal on medical grounds, citing documented health decline and erratic cognitive function, including a diagnosed chronic venous insufficiency requiring ongoing intervention. While the medical entry is now in the congressional record, the claims remain unverified, and the call is highly unusual, lacking formal constitutional mechanism for action. The visible physical symptoms of Trump's health decline have been increasingly apparent to anyone who has been paying attention, because photographs from recent months show swollen ankles, discolored rashes on his neck, and bruised hands that raise questions about what is happening to his body. A former White House physician has told the Associated Press that concern for Trump's health is at an all-time high, and that his physical age is the #1 concern among medical professionals who have observed him.
Well, it's fake news. It's so fake. That's why the media has so little credibility. I knew they were saying, like, is he okay? How's he feeling? What's wrong? I said, I just left. And it's also sort of a longer weekend, it's Labor Day weekend. So I would say a lot of people know I was very active this Labor Day. I had heard that, but I didn't hear it to that extent.
Well, Pete Seat and Joanna Masca are still with us here. Joanna, there's something incredibly distasteful about discussing someone's demise like this, as it was rumoured on the internet over the weekend. What do you make of it all? Or did President Trump largely bring these conversations about, considering how many times he attacked Joe Biden last year for his health?
Well, that's exactly right. It is awful. It's awful that people are cheering on someone else's demise, especially the president of the United States, because anyone, and Pete and I have both worked for presidents of the United States, if you have worked in that office, you know how important it is that that president is in command. And
the White House has attempted to dismiss these symptoms as minor issues, claiming that the bruising is from handshakes and the rashes are minor skin problems. But the fact that they feel compelled to provide explanations at all suggests that the symptoms are noticeable and concerning to observers. The cognitive changes that medical professionals have documented are perhaps the most alarming aspect of Trump's health decline, because they go to the heart of his ability to perform the duties of his office, especially his authority over nuclear weapons. According to the statement from the 36 doctors, Trump's speech has become increasingly rambling and disorganized. He loses his train of thought in the middle of sentences. He makes factual confusions that suggest his memory is failing, and he goes on tangential digressions that make it difficult to follow his arguments. His vocabulary has become more limited.
And I would never wish for anything to happen to a president of the United States of America. And yet we saw for many years, President Trump and others in the Republican Party call into question Joe Biden's health. There should have been questions from the press as well, because there were legitimate problems with his health. He was old. And it turns out Donald Trump is also old. He also would have been in the same graduating high school class, just a couple of years younger, but they would have been in the same high school together. So there are going to be continued questions on this. I do think, at the end of the day, my biggest problem is that we're rooting for each other's destruction when we root for the worst for the president of the United States. And I wish that we would stop doing it.
And Pete, we all know how things can, pretty much take on a very wild turn when they start being speculated over on social media. But do you agree with Joanna that if you give it, and Donald Trump has talked about Joe Biden's health a lot, that you've got to take it? He's got to take it now, the speculation about his state of health.
He repeats words and phrases, and he struggles to complete sentences in ways that suggest cognitive deterioration that is noticeable and concerning to medical professionals. The specific documentation of these cognitive changes is important because it moves the discussion out of the realm of partisan opinion and into the realm of professional medical assessment. The doctors who issued the congressional record statement did not simply express a vague concern about Trump's age or health. They documented specific observable signs of cognitive decline that they believe indicate a rapidly worsening condition. They cited examples of disorganized and tangential speech, rambling digressions, factual confusions, sudden unexplained changes in strategic decisions, and episodes of apparent drowsiness during critical public proceedings.
Well, there was plenty of evidence to support that Joe Biden's health was rapidly declining. And we also know, thanks to some enterprising reporting by a number of journalists in Washington, D.C., just how bad the situation was in the West Wing and how Joe Biden was being hidden from the public and not even making phone calls or attending meetings on what were considered his, quote, bad days. We know from some of this reporting that he would call, for example, Joe Scarborough from MSNBC on the, quote, good days. So Joe would always have a conversation with a lucid and very in touch Joe Biden versus what some staff were seeing throughout that presidency. And a lot of staff were kept away from Joe Biden. Only very close senior staff were able to interact with him. I do agree wholeheartedly, though, that it's disgusting to watch some of the conversations that have been taking place online. And I believe that there's a segment of the Democratic Party that saw the health questions about Joe Biden work politically, and they're taking their turn at it, hoping that it works politically in their favor. But it is sad. It's a sad state of affairs that we confuse policy disagreement with despising a human being.
These are not subjective impressions. They are observable behaviors that medical professionals are trained to recognize and evaluate. The formal statement that was entered into the congressional record on April 30th, 2026, represents an extraordinary intervention by the medical community into the political process, because doctors typically avoid becoming involved in political controversies and prefer to focus on their clinical work. But the 36 physicians and mental health specialists who signed the statement felt that the situation had become so serious that they had a professional obligation to speak up, and they explicitly stated that Trump's mental instability, combined with his sole unchecked authority to launch nuclear weapons, makes him a clear and present danger to the nation. This is not a statement that doctors would make lightly, and the fact that they felt compelled to issue it suggests that they believe the situation is genuinely urgent. The statement's conclusion that Trump is mentally unfit and should be removed from office with the greatest urgency is the most dramatic part of the document, because it represents a formal medical judgment that a sitting president is not capable of performing the duties of his office. The doctors did not hedge their language or express their concerns in diplomatic terms. They stated clearly and unequivocally that Trump's behaviors reflect a rapidly worsening reality and an increasingly dangerous decline that requires immediate action. This is not the language of political opposition. It is the language of medical professionals who believe that a patient's condition poses a risk to public safety and who have a professional obligation to sound the alarm. The context in which these medical concerns are emerging is also significant because Trump has been making increasingly erratic decisions on matters of war and nuclear policy, raising questions about whether his cognitive decline is affecting his judgment in ways that could have catastrophic consequences. According According to reporting in the doctor's statement, Trump has made sudden, unexplained changes in strategic decisions. He has shown episodes of apparent drowsiness during critical public proceedings, and he has made increasingly extreme and irrational threats on nuclear matters. These are not minor lapses in judgment. They are the kinds of behaviors that would concern any observer, and they are particularly alarming when they involve someone with sole authority over nuclear weapons. The reduced public schedule that Trump has maintained in his current term is another piece of evidence that supports the medical concerns, because he has made approximately 40% fewer public appearances than he did during his first term, suggesting that his health is limiting his ability to maintain the activity level that would be expected of a president. A reduced schedule is consistent with someone who is dealing with a medical condition that limits their energy and mobility, and it raises questions about whether Trump is able to perform the duties of his office at the level that the American people have a right to expect. If a president cannot maintain a normal public schedule, it is reasonable to ask whether they are capable of handling the demands of the presidency. The combination of documented medical diagnosis, visible physical symptoms, observable cognitive changes, erratic decision-making, and reduced public schedule creates a comprehensive picture of health decline that is difficult to dismiss as rumor or political attack. The medical professionals who have raised concerns are not relying on speculation or hearsay. They are citing specific, observable evidence that supports their conclusion that Trump's health is deteriorating and that he is not fit to continue holding office. And the fact that their concerns have been entered into the congressional record means that they are part of the official historical record and cannot be easily ignored or dismissed. The Nuclear Weapons Authority issue is the most urgent aspect of the medical concerns because it raises the possibility that a president whose cognitive function is declining could make a catastrophic decision that could lead to war and the destruction of millions of lives. The doctors who signed the congressional record statement explicitly cited Trump's unchecked authority to launch nuclear weapons without consultation as a reason for their urgent call for removal, and they made clear that they believe this authority should not remain in the hands of someone whose mental instability is becoming increasingly apparent. This is not a theoretical concern. It is a concrete risk that could materialize at any moment if Trump's judgment becomes even more impaired. The political and constitutional system for removing a president who is medically unfit is the 25th Amendment, which provides a mechanism for transferring power when a president is unable to discharge their duties. But the mechanism is extraordinarily difficult to use, requiring the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to agree that the president is unable to serve, and if the president contests that determination, requiring a two-thirds vote in both the House and the Senate. Given the partisan polarization that characterizes American politics, it is extremely unlikely that these thresholds would be met, even if medical professionals are saying that the situation is urgent. So there is a fundamental mismatch between the urgency of the medical concerns and the difficulty of the constitutional response. The implications of this mismatch are profound because it means that the country could be in a situation where medical professionals are saying that the president is not fit to serve, but the political system is unable to respond. This is not a hypothetical concern. It is a real possibility that could become more acute as Trump's health continues to decline, and as the cognitive changes that doctors have documented become more pronounced. The system is not designed to handle a situation where a president's health is deteriorating, but the political will to remove them is lacking, and that design flaw is a vulnerability that could have catastrophic consequences. The broader message of the medical professionals' intervention is that the health of the president is not just a private matter, it is a matter of public concern that affects the security and stability of the entire nation. When a president's health is declining and their cognitive function is deteriorating, it is not just a personal tragedy, it is a national security risk that requires urgent attention. The doctors who issued the congressional record statement are making that point forcefully and clearly, and they are calling on the political system to respond to their concerns before it is too late. Whether the political system will respond remains to be seen, but the doctors have done their part by sounding the alarm and entering their concerns into the official record. The specific details of Trump's health decline that the medical professionals have documented are deeply concerning because they represent a pattern of deterioration that is becoming increasingly visible and increasingly alarming to observers. The chronic venous insufficiency diagnosis is a real medical condition with real consequences, affecting blood flow and causing swelling that can lead to complications if not managed properly. This is not a condition that can be ignored or dismissed. It requires ongoing medical management and limits the patient's ability to be active and engaged in the way that a president needs to be. The fact that Trump was diagnosed with this condition at Walter Reed and that it has been documented in medical records means that there is concrete evidence of his health decline that cannot be dismissed as speculation or rumor. The visible physical symptoms that have been observed in photographs and public appearances provide additional evidence of health decline that is difficult to explain away. Swollen ankles, discolored rashes, and bruised hands are not normal for a healthy individual, and the fact that they have been observed repeatedly over time suggests that they are part of a pattern rather than isolated incidents. The White House has attempted to provide explanations for these symptoms, claiming that the bruising is from handshakes and that the rashes are minor skin problems, but the medical professionals who have observed Trump are not convinced by these explanations and have expressed ongoing concern about his health status. The cognitive changes that medical professionals have documented are the most serious aspect of Trump's health decline because they go to his ability to make decisions and perform the duties of his office. According to the statement from the 36 doctors, Trump's speech has become increasingly rambling and disorganized. He loses his train of thought mid-sentence, he makes factual confusions, and he goes on tangential digressions that don't make sense. These are the kinds of changes that medical professionals would flag as concerning in someone of advanced age, and they are particularly alarming in someone with nuclear weapons authority because they raise questions about whether he is capable of making rational decisions in a crisis. The specific examples that the doctors cited in their statement are important because they document observable behaviors that can be verified by anyone who watches Trump's public appearances. The rambling digressions, the struggle to complete sentences, the limited vocabulary, and the repetition of words and phrases are all observable patterns that anyone can see, and they are consistent with the kinds of cognitive changes that occur in people with dementia or other conditions that affect brain function. The doctors who signed the statement are not making subjective judgments about Trump's behavior. They are documenting specific patterns that are consistent with cognitive decline, and that should be taken seriously by anyone concerned about the president's fitness to serve. The erratic decision-making that the doctors cited is also a concern because it suggests that Trump's judgment is becoming impaired in ways that could have serious consequences. Sudden, unexplained changes in strategic decisions, episodes of apparent drowsiness during critical public proceedings, and increasingly extreme and irrational threats on nuclear matters are not the behaviors of a president who is in full control of his faculties, and they raise questions about whether Trump is capable of handling the weighty responsibilities of his office. The doctors who signed the statement explicitly cited these behaviors as evidence of the decline they are observing, and they argued that they make Trump a clear and present danger to the nation. The reduced public schedule that Trump has maintained is another piece of evidence that supports the medical concerns because it suggests that his health is limiting his ability to function in the way that a president should. Appearing in public approximately 40% less frequently than he did during his first term is a significant reduction, and it is consistent with someone who is dealing with health issues that limit their energy and mobility. While the White House has not explicitly acknowledged that Trump's health is limiting his schedule, the reduction in public appearances is difficult to explain otherwise, and it raises questions about whether Trump is able to perform the duties of his office at the level that the American people have a right to expect. The formal statement from the 36 doctors that was entered into the congressional record represents an extraordinary intervention by the medical community that should not be taken lightly. These are not political activists or partisan operatives. They are senior physicians and mental health specialists with credentials and expertise that give their opinions weight and authority. The fact that they felt compelled to issue a statement calling for Trump's removal on medical grounds suggests that they believe the situation is genuinely urgent and that the political political system needs to respond to their concerns. Their statement is not a partisan attack. It is a professional medical warning that deserves serious attention. The doctor's statement explicitly cites the combination of Trump's mental instability and his sole authority to launch nuclear weapons as the reason for their urgent call for removal, and they argue that this combination makes him a clear and present danger to the nation. This is not a theoretical concern. It is a concrete risk that could materialize at any moment if Trump's cognitive decline continues and his judgment becomes even more impaired. The authority to launch nuclear weapons is the most serious responsibility that a president has, and if the person holding that authority is not mentally fit, the security of the nation is at risk. The doctors who signed the statement are making that point forcefully and clearly. The constitutional mechanism for removing a president who is medically unfit is the 25th Amendment, which provides for the transfer of power when a president is unable to discharge their duties. But the mechanism is extraordinarily difficult to use, requiring the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to agree that the president is unable to serve. And if the president contests that determination, requiring a two-thirds vote in both the House and the Senate. Given the partisan polarization that characterizes American politics, it is extremely unlikely that these thresholds would be met, even if medical professionals are saying that the situation is urgent. The system is not designed to handle a situation where a president's health is deteriorating, but the political will to remove them is lacking. The practical difficulty of using the 25th Amendment means that even if Trump's health decline continues and becomes more pronounced, the political system may be unable to respond. This is a fundamental vulnerability in the constitutional system, and it is one that the doctors who signed the congressional record statement are implicitly highlighting when they call for urgent action. The system assumes that the president will be medically fit and that if a president becomes unfit, there is a mechanism to remove them. But if that mechanism is so difficult to use that it is practically impossible, then the system is not adequately protecting the nation from the risk of a president who is not capable of performing their duties. The implications of this vulnerability are profound because it means that the country could be in a situation where the president's health is declining and their cognitive function is deteriorating, but the political system is unable to respond. This is not a hypothetical concern. It is a real possibility that could become more acute as Trump's health continues to decline and as the cognitive changes that doctors have documented become more pronounced. The system is not designed to handle a situation where a president's health is deteriorating, but the political will to remove them is lacking, and that design flaw is a vulnerability that could have catastrophic consequences. The doctor's intervention has already had an impact on the national conversation about Trump's health because it has moved the discussion out of the realm of partisan speculation and into the realm of professional medical concern. The statement has been covered extensively by major news outlets, and it has prompted a serious conversation about whether Trump is medically fit to continue holding office and whether the constitutional system has adequate mechanisms for addressing concerns about a president's health. This is a conversation that needed to happen, and the doctors who signed the statement should be credited for forcing it into the open. The ultimate issue that the medical professionals are raising is the safety of the nation, and whether a president whose health is declining should continue to have sole authority over nuclear weapons. This is not a political question. It is a matter of national security that should be evaluated on medical and strategic grounds, not partisan ones. The doctors who signed the congressional record statement are making the argument that Trump's mental instability, combined with his unchecked authority to launch nuclear weapons, makes him a clear and present danger, and they are calling on the political system to respond to that danger before it is too late. The fact that they felt compelled to make this argument publicly suggests that they believe the situation is urgent and that the system is not responding adequately. The comparison between Trump's current health status and his health during his first term is instructive because it shows the degree of decline that has occurred over time. In his first term, Trump maintained a robust public schedule, appeared frequently at rallies and events, and showed no signs of the cognitive decline that medical professionals are now documenting. In his current term, by contrast, he has reduced his public appearances by approximately 40%. He shows visible signs of physical decline, and his cognitive function appears to be deteriorating in ways that are observable to anyone who watches his public appearances. This is a significant decline that should be taken seriously by anyone concerned about the president's fitness to serve. The specific specific medical conditions that have been documented provide a medical basis for the concerns that the doctors have raised. Chronic venous insufficiency is a real condition with real consequences, and it requires ongoing management and limits the patient's ability to be active. The visible physical symptoms that have been observed are consistent with this condition and with other health issues that may be affecting Trump. The cognitive changes that have been documented are also consistent with the kinds of decline that occur in people of advanced age, and they raise questions about whether Trump is capable of making rational decisions in a crisis. The combination of these factors creates a comprehensive picture of health decline that is difficult to dismiss or minimize. The doctor's call for removal is based on their professional assessment of Trump's health and their judgment that he is not fit to continue holding office. This is not a political judgment, it is a medical one, and it deserves to be evaluated on its medical merits rather than being dismissed as partisan attack. The doctors who signed the statement have credentials and expertise that give their opinions weight, and they have documented specific observable signs of decline that support their conclusion. The fact that they have entered their concerns into the congressional record means that they are willing to stand behind their assessment publicly and that they are calling on the political system to respond. The political system's response to the doctor's concerns will be a test of whether the system is capable of responding to urgent medical warnings about a president's fitness to serve. The 25th Amendment provides a mechanism for transferring power when a president is unable to discharge their duties, but the mechanism is difficult to use and requires political will that may be lacking in a polarized environment. If the system cannot respond to the doctor's concerns, it will raise questions about whether the constitutional framework is adequate to protect the nation from the risk of a president who is not medically fit to serve. The broader implications of the doctor's intervention extend beyond Trump himself because they raise questions about the adequacy of the constitutional system to handle situations where a president's health is declining. The system assumes that the president will be medically fit and that if a president becomes unfit, there is a mechanism to remove them. But if that mechanism is so difficult to use that it is practically impossible, then the system is not adequately protecting the nation from the risk of a president who is not capable of performing their duties. This is a systemic vulnerability that should be addressed regardless of who is president or what party they belong to. The doctor's statement also raises questions about the role of medical professionals in evaluating the fitness of public officials, and whether there should be a mechanism for regular health assessments of presidents and other senior officials. Currently, there is no requirement for presidents to undergo periodic health assessments, and the results of any assessments that are conducted are not always released to the public. This lack of transparency makes it difficult for the public to evaluate the fitness of their leaders, and it creates a situation where health concerns can be hidden or minimized until they become acute. The urgency of the doctor's call for removal reflects their assessment that Trump's health decline is accelerating and that the situation could become worse if action is not taken soon. They argue that his behaviors reflect a rapidly worsening reality and an increasingly dangerous decline, and they believe that the situation requires urgent action. The fact that they use language like rapidly worsening and increasingly dangerous suggests that they believe the window for action is closing and that the nation cannot afford to wait while Trump's health continues to deteriorate. The public reaction to the doctor's statement will be an important factor in determining whether the political system responds to their concerns. If the public is alarmed by the doctor's assessment and demands action, it will put pressure on elected officials to respond. If the public is dismissive or indifferent, it will be easier for elected officials to ignore the doctor's concerns. The coverage of the story by major news outlets is likely to shape public perceptions, and the doctor's willingness to speak out publicly will help ensure that their concerns are heard and considered. The ultimate outcome of the doctor's intervention is uncertain because it depends on whether the political system responds to their concerns and whether the public supports action. But the intervention itself is significant because it represents a professional medical warning that cannot be easily dismissed or ignored. The doctors have done their part by sounding the alarm and entering their concerns into the official record, and it is now up to the political system and the public to decide how to respond. The nation will be watching to see whether the system can rise to this challenge and whether the medical concerns that have been raised will be taken seriously. The The doctor's intervention is also a reminder that the health of the president is not just a private matter, it is a matter of public concern that affects the security and stability of the entire nation. When a president's health is declining and their cognitive function is deteriorating, it is not just a personal tragedy, it is a national security risk that requires urgent attention. The doctors who issued the congressional record statement are making that point forcefully and clearly, and they are calling on the political system to respond to their concerns before it is too late. Whether the political system will respond remains to be seen, but the doctors have done their part by sounding the alarm and entering their concerns into the official record. The final significance of the doctor's intervention is that it has brought the issue of Trump's health out of the shadows and into the public spotlight, where it can be discussed and debated openly. For too long, questions about Trump's health have been treated as off-limits or as partisan attacks, but the doctors have shown that it is possible to raise these concerns in a professional and responsible way. Their intervention has set a precedent for future discussions about presidential health, and it has made it clear that medical professionals have a role to play in evaluating the fitness of public officials. This is a development that should be welcomed by anyone who believes in transparency and accountability in government, because it ensures that the public has the information they need to evaluate the fitness of their leaders.